For a generation, Mars has been sold as the obvious next home. Red dirt, boots on ground, flags, footprints, and a future that looks like a postcard from the 1970s. That story is powerful. It is also incomplete. The solar system is not a hallway with one door at the end. It is a set of skies with different rules, different prices, and different ways to fail. Some of those skies are closer than they look. Some are stranger than tourism ads can stand. This is Second Skies on the Quantum Files. Episode 1 asks a blunt question. What if the race to Mars trained us to ignore better matches for human life? Not because Mars is worthless, but because familiarity is not the same as fitness. A sky is not wallpaper. It is pressure, radiation, chemistry, temperature, and the way light and silence arrive. On Earth, the sky is thick enough to burn meteors, soft enough to breathe, and loud enough that radio astronomy has to fight civilization. On Mars, the sky is thin, cold, and dusty. A filter that does little work for pressure and only partial work for radiation. On Venus, the surface sky is an oven under an ocean of carbon dioxide. And altitude may change which problems dominate, which is a question this series will examine carefully, not settle in one sentence. On Titan, the sky is orange and heavy with nitrogen, and liquid methane falls like weather. On the far side of the Moon, the sky is black and radio quiet in a way Earth can never be again. Choose a home by the wrong sky metric and you inherit the wrong engineering forever. Public debate still ranks worlds by postcard aesthetics. Can you stand there? Can you plant a flag? Does the light look like afternoon on Earth? Those are useful questions for a film set. They are incomplete questions for lungs, circuits, and budgets. Second Skies will keep asking what the sky does for you and what it takes from you. Before we call any destination a home, the solar system does not owe us a convenient second Earth. It offers mismatched gifts. Air without warmth, warmth without air, silence without logistics, resources without calendars. Second Skies exists to sort those gifts without nostalgia. That sorting is the method of the series. Name the job, name the axis, then judge the sky. Cosmology does not hire the same environment that industrial feedstock hires. A surface town does not hire the same environment that a radio sanctuary hires. Confusing those jobs is how monocultures form. One poster, one budget story, one failure mode practiced until it feels inevitable. When engineers talk about habitability, they often mean liquid water and energy. When mission designers talk about habitability, they mean mass, power, spare parts, and abort paths. Both definitions matter. A sky that gives you pressure but takes your hull with acid is not a free lunch. A sky that gives you silence but takes your night with a 2-week freeze is not a free lunch either. The series will keep the price tag attached to every gift. Mars wins arguments for reasons that feel rational. It has a solid surface. It has ice. It has a day length near Earth's. It has decades of robotic maps and public imagination. Path to Mars on this channel already walked the hard parts. Distance, landing, fuel, dust, habitats, delay. Those problems are real. The bias is subtler. We treat a surface you can stand on as progress, even when the air cannot hold you, and we treat a floating habitat as science fiction, even when the pressure is closer to Earth. We also treat nearness as destiny. Mars is farther than the Moon and closer than Saturn, so it sits in the sweet spot of ambition. Second Skies is not anti-Mars. It is anti-monoculture. A civilization that only practices one kind of world learns one kind of failure mode. Another bias is heritage hardware. Because we have practiced thin atmosphere landings and surface rovers, we treat those skills as the main path. Atmospheric aerostats, radio quiet operations, and cryogenic hydrocarbon plants are younger cultural muscles. Building only what we already know how to pitch creates a monoculture of unlocks. Diversity of skies forces diversity of technology. And that is a strategic good, even if Mars remains important. Funding follows photography unless scientists and engineers insist on fitness metrics. Surface boots photograph like destiny. Floating hulls photograph like concept art. Radio arrays photograph like infrastructure. Pretty pictures are not the same as pressure, dose, or delay. And those harder metrics are the ones that decide whether a sky can carry a crew. There is also a timeline bias. Robotic Mars success creates a sense that the next logical step is always more Mars. That can be true for science. It is not automatically true for settlement architecture. A portfolio of skies is how you avoid discovering, after decades of sunk cost, that the only muscle you built was the thin air surface muscle. Second skies will keep Mars in the conversation as a peer, not as a default king. To keep this series honest, every world gets scored on axes that matter to bodies and machines. Pressure. How hard is it to keep lungs working without an overbuilt can? Radiation. How much sky or rock buys backdose? Temperature swings. How violent is the daily and seasonal fight? Gravity. What does bone and balance inherit over years? Distance and delay. How late does help arrive? Resources. What can you make locally without pretending a rock is a grocery store? Quiet and science value. What unique observation or chemistry exists nowhere else? Mars starts strong on surface access and public readiness. That much is already visible from decades of maps and missions. Other skies will enter the same board later. Venus's altitude bands, Titan's thick air and outer system calendar, the Moon's radio-quiet far side, and rocks that refuse to sit still. This episode names the axes. The later episodes earn the scores. No world gets crowned from a single paragraph. Radiation scoring is messy on purpose. Magnetic fields, atmospheric depth, regolith cover, storm shelters, and mission duration all trade. Mars has no global magnetic shield and a thin air blanket. Other skies buy shielding differently, with atmospheric depth, with rock cover, with native mass if a body cooperates. And each purchase comes with a different bill. The series will keep those trades visible instead of pretending one radiation number ends the argument. No single number ends the argument. The series will keep the trade visible. Pressure deserves special attention because the public underrates it. Temperature shows up in weather reports. Pressure shows up in structural mass, leak rates, and the violence of a breach. A world with near-Earth pressure can still kill you with chemistry, but it changes the habitat from a submarine in reverse into something closer to a sealed building with toxic neighbors. That difference compounds across every hatch, window, and EVA plan. Honesty is the axis that keeps the others from becoming propaganda. Honesty means labeling a concept as study, demo, or habitat. Honesty means saying robot only when human presence would contaminate the prize. Honesty means admitting that public readiness is a real score, because programs die without it. Without letting public readiness veto physics. That honesty axis is how this series stays a comparison tool instead of a sales pitch. Engineering culture loves heritage. Heritage is valuable when it means tested hardware. It becomes a trap when it means we keep building the same habitat story because it photographs well. A surface base looks like a town. An aerostat looks like a ship that never docks. A radio array on the far side looks like an antenna farm in a crater. Viewers and funders reward the town. Physics rewards the match. Second skies will keep returning to that tension. If a world asks for floating cities, we will not pretend they are vacation resorts. If a world asks for robot-only honesty, We will not cast humans as the default explorers. The goal is curiosity with teeth. Which sky would you actually bet a crew on, and why? Distance is a political and medical variable disguised as astronomy. A 3-year cruise is not the same product as a 6-month transfer. Spare parts, crew psychology, abort options, and public patience all scale with light minutes and months. Titan can win atmosphere and still lose a near-term crewed contest to Mars on calendar alone. Fitness includes the clock. There's also a language trap. We say colonization and imply a backyard. We say outpost and imply a temporary camp. We say science station and imply a clean lab. Real missions blur those words. A Venus aerostat is closer to a ship than a city. A far-side array is closer to a temple of silence than a suburb. An ice moon probe is closer to a sterile needle than a colony. Calling every destination a home muddies the scoreboard before the game starts. Second skies will name the job first, then pick the sky. Ask a sharper question than where would you live. Ask which job you are hiring a sky to do. Cosmology hires quiet. Atmospheric engineering hires dense air. Industrial feedstock hires accessible chemistry. Surface towns hire ground you can grade and ice you can mine. If you hire Mars to do every job, you will overpay in the wrong currency on half of them. This series will not relitigate every Mars landing problem as if it were new. Path to Mars already covers that stack. It will not treat a polite pressure reading as proof that a sky is easy. It will not turn outer world chemistry into paradise language without the thermal and calendar costs. It will not treat buried oceans as vacation packages. Near-term, mid-term, and speculative ideas will be named as such. Published NASA concepts and flown missions will appear as studies and machines, not as finished cities. Obstacles are unfinished unlocks, not excuses to stop looking. Curiosity can be glamorous. It cannot be dishonest. Loving Mars does not require hating other skies. Protecting radio quiet does not cancel polar ice work. Ranking some destinations as robot-first science does not insult human ambition. It protects the measurement from our own microbes and our own impatience. Second Skies is a comparison tool, not a cancellation campaign. When a metric favors Mars, we will say so. When a metric favors another sky, we will say that too. The point is a sharper instinct for which problems are physics and which are advertising, and for which job each sky is actually being hired to do. The rest of the season walks those axes across different skies. Venus gets an atmospheric chapter, not to crown a floating city in advance, but to score altitude, chemistry, and return the way a workplace would have to. The Moon's far side gets a silence chapter, quiet as a resource, and what happens when our own machines threaten it. Asteroids get a motion chapter, addresses that move, and what that does to industry and rescue. Titan gets an outer system chapter, thick air under a long calendar. Ice moons get a water chapter that separates wonder from habitability. The finale puts the columns on one board and asks which sky wins which job, without inventing a fake overall champion. If Mars is one door, Second Skies is the hallway next to it. Think of the season as training different muscles rather than repeating one surface story. Mars, already covered elsewhere on this channel, remains the surface reference, useful, hard, incomplete as a monopoly. By the end, you should be able to hear a destination pitch and ask, which axis is this selling, and which axis is it hiding? Between episodes, keep one sentence in your pocket. Familiarity is not fitness. If a thumbnail makes you feel progress, pause and name the axis. Progress on landing is not progress on pressure. Progress on rover autonomy is not progress on materials chemistry. Progress on polar ice is not the same as progress on radio quiet, and sometimes those goals compete. Holding two truths is adult spaceflight. Next time, we leave the surface obsession behind and ask what Venus looks like when you stop treating the ground as the whole planet.